BaxterStorey podcast. I'm Samantha Wakeham, Head of Creative at BaxterStorey, and your host for our next mini-series, Breaking Bread, Exploring Hospitality as the Ultimate Accessible Career. In this episode, we will be discussing the important topic of making hospitality a space of inclusion, an attractive choice for candidates, and exploring how the industry needs to think differently when creating job opportunities and hiring talent. In these times, with the steep decline of hospitality candidates post-COVID and Brexit, businesses that foster social mobility and offer educational pathways are not only engaging in doing the right thing or a nice to have, instead they are thinking differently, strategically harnessing a valuable pool of candidates that has become an increasingly valuable resource as the landscape of recruitment undergoes transformation. To start off this series, I'm joined by our BaxterStorey Early Careers Manager, Charlie Radnor, who is on a mission to create an inclusive community of candidates and drive social mobility and education gateways in our business. We love seeing the important work Charlie does to make a real difference. Also with me today is special guest Greg Mangham, founder and chief executive of Only A Pavement Away, a charity that creates stability through employment by connecting people from socially disadvantaged backgrounds into hospitality. Greg and his team's incredible work is fostering action to vulnerable communities with great impact. Thank you, Charlie and Greg, for joining us today. It's really great to have you on our podcast and joining our recruitment series. So first up, Charlie, it's a real pleasure to have you with us. Can you just tell the listeners a little bit about you and what your roles in early careers managers involve and why is it so important to you?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I work within the recruitment team. We are working on a newly launched initiative to do with early careers. So as part of the recruitment team, we have your traditional recruiters, and what I concentrate on is finding and identifying candidates who perhaps we wouldn't be able to find through traditional methods of recruitment, who wouldn't just be able to go onto our website and apply as you normally would. And so that would be through, as you mentioned, education gateways. But as well as that, we look at partnering with social mobility providers and charities and organisations who give people a chance to get into employment who perhaps wouldn't be able to, as I say, apply through a normal method. So that's through our partnerships with Only A Pavement Away. And I think it's a demonstration of our commitment to our inclusivity and our diversity that we want to continue with it amongst our employees and our workforce. And that means finding people from all walks of life and giving them a chance in our world and looking after them once we get them in. So yeah, it's early days, but that's what I do at the moment.
Well, thank you, Charlie. And Greg as well. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. It's quite a big question, can you introduce Only A Pavement Away and tell us your story behind funding and founding this charity?
I think the first thing to say that's really important that Only A Pavement Away will get from this is to have met Charlie, because one of the things, not having been a charity bod or involved in it, is prevention. And I think things like the Early Careers Programme and seeking out where you can get into, say, referral units or people who wouldn't necessarily have applied for a job with BaxterStorey or into some of the operations you work in is important and will alleviate the burden on the charities and add value to society. So I think that what you're doing on early careers is very important, and more people should do it.
Yeah, cool.
Only A Pavement Away. God, that started as in all good hospitality after a Saturday night out in the Strand. So Jill and I, my wife and I, were walking along, and we were just suddenly taken back by the amount of rough sleepers, and that they're the same age as our nieces and our nephews. And then Jill just said, someone should do something. I said, well, we've got 80,000 vacancies in hospitality. So she said, well, why don't you do something? Lined up with Crisis and a guy there called Dulal, who's still a trustee, and a guy called Ben, who I did consultancy work for, and is a pal. And he's now a trustee and has been since the beginning. And we said, if we do it properly, can we get some people into work? And I was then going to go off and back to my consultancy, as you do when you're semi-retired. And I got offered a very lucrative job to go back into betting. And Jill said, you're going to do what Dulal said. You're going to come in, help a few people, bugger off, basically. So that night we closed the consultancy down. And we set up Only A Pavement Away, and we've got some great trustees, including Maria Thanford from you folks. And we work very simply. We have a jobs board that is locked down through logins. So only our members can see the jobs, or can apply for the jobs. and our employers can post the jobs. And then if someone goes through the Secure Jobs Board, then if they get a job, then we give them financial and emotional support for a year afterwards. So we will pay people's rent, we pay off their debts of utility bills, help them with their clothing and their food. And to date, we've placed, up until this morning, 386 people into work, of which 295 are still going. We lost a fair few of our custodial friends during the pandemic because they were offered more lucrative ways to work and didn't have any support. And our average length of service is about 40 weeks. And those 386 that are in work have added about 11.5 million to the economy. And hospitality fund us. No, we don't get funding from anywhere else. It's totally hospitality.
That was one of my questions. How do you raise this money?
It's hospitality funders. They fund us, and it's also through campaigns we do. So we have a big event coming up in September. That's our fundraiser, Cook and Dine, where we raise 35. One of my daughters runs a thing called Hiking Against Homelessness, where we take people, we took them to Snowdon. Next year we're taking them on the Peak District, and then we're going to go to Extreme, and then we're going to do really extreme Kilimanjaro and things like that. We do a thing called Peddling for Pubs, where we have 50 riders who are going out to Kenya next year, but we also do it locally. We're doing Tough Mudder in a couple of weeks. I have to say here, I do not do any of these. I go on with a T-shirt, support, and Jill and I do any catering that's needed. And cheering on and think that's time. As they do at Tough Mudder, they sort of say, that was tough. I always sort of say to them, you should have queued up for the burger van. That was horrendous, So, but that's how we get funded.
So I wanted to talk about the hospitality crisis and the recruitment crisis that we have at the moment, and the challenges that we face in the industry. At the moment, I've read around 400,000 vacancies in the UK alone for 2022, accounting for a quarter over pre-pandemic figures. However, amidst these statistics, there is still a substantial number of individuals in the UK who are seeking employment. What, in your opinion, is the reason for this gap, and what do you think we can do to try and close that?
Well, let's address the elephant in the room. Hospitality does get a bad rap, and I think unless you've been in it or you're part of it, you're either you want to be in it and you're passionate about hospitality, or you're out. So I think we can all do as much as we can to bang the drum about the career prospects that you can have if you enter hospitality. But I think it's really important with the work that Only A Pavement Away does and what we can at BaxterStorey just try and do, which is to give people the opportunity from the beginning. All we can do is initiatives like this and work with people like Only A Pavement Away to be able to give those people a chance who on paper might get overlooked in any other situation in a pool of candidates with other people with experience. But we have such a spectrum of roles, and we can take people from so many different walks of life and and give them a chance, and then it's up to them to take that, and I think that's exactly what we're doing, and that's what hospitality can do for people. But you have to give them a chance to experience that for themselves, and that's the commitment that BaxterStorey have shown by launching this initiative, to give those people a chance and to take those people who are passionate and hungry for work and will be looking at their careers in a different way to perhaps other people who have been to college or to university or perhaps are looking better in inverted commas on paper, and try and bridge that gap between those people looking for work and the opportunities we can give them.
I want to go back to that elephant in the room and that image of hospitality. Do you think there's something that we can do to make that image glossier or better, for a better term of word?
I think it's about showing success stories, and it's about showing people it's not what you think if you haven't been as part of the world of it. Working in hospitality is absolutely fantastic if you are supported and looked after and are part of a team that create wonderful food, wonderful service, and that's what we need to show people, and I think that's what we have the opportunity to do at BaxterStorey. It's about shining examples of giving somebody that role and how they can flourish.
And the career opportunities, there's so many. I mean, you've both been in the industry for a number of years. You wouldn't be here if there wasn't that opportunity. So I think that kind of image of a career growth needs to be shouted about more.
Definitely. I'd agree with you. I think we need to change the image. We need to stamp out a couple of things. We need to get rid of this. Anybody saying we're low skilled. I met someone who said to me, this is good. You'll get people who are facing homelessness and prison leavers and military personnel who have suffered, anxiety and PTSD, because he's low skilled, isn't it? So I just said, do you want to do half an hour on the barista station? So I took him to a coffee chain, put him on the barista station. I had to take him for a drink afterwards. There was frothy milk everywhere. There was cappuccino everywhere. I said, now, when I started off, if you're talking about it, you always made the chips look golden, the peas were always green, the steak always looked like it had been grilled. You got 400 of those going out on a Saturday night. That's not low skilled. That's pressure, and I think we need to get rid of that. And not just because he's our ambassador, but I think we need more people like the Michelin star chef Tom Aikens around, who actually talks about it as a career and doesn't do it so he can have his picture taken and get on television. When we go and sometimes do recruitment fairs in prisons, we get the same thing. Why would I want to join hospitality? It's 30 pence an hour. It's every evening till 2:00, and I get shouted out and sworn out by this crazy chef. Well, no, actually, you get shares, benefits, uniforms. You're paid above the London living wage. You can be a manager of your own outlet within 18 months, 2 years. You get training, you've got team camaraderie. We support you. And they suddenly leave the dry lining queue and the bricklaying queue and want to know more about hospitality. And I think the other thing is we need to possibly stop telling everybody that we're in the mire. Oh, it's terrible. Because people are thinking, I'm not going to go near hospitality because they're shutting down. We need to actually get a story out there that's exciting and do what Charlie says is that, this is open to everyone. You can come in and you can end up at the top of the food chain, so to speak. You can get in. And when we do sort of like taster sessions and what we call our passport to employment, the example I would give is that we've got a guy who had a stroke, lost the use of his right side, couldn't speak for 3 years. He's now working at the Hilton Park Lane because we held a course in there and the general manager liked Gerald. And Gerald said, I won't get a job here. His speech was really bad. And so he's working in the laundry and he loves it. And the manager of the laundry says to everyone, you don't interrupt Gerald, you let him speak. He would not, have walked in and applied for a job. He definitely wouldn't have walked into the Park Lane Hotel. But if we can get stories like that out, like Charlie says, we can start to get the good news stories out. Other people from diverse backgrounds and people who are suffering some form of vulnerability will think, hang on a minute, we don't want to use someone like Gerald as this poster boy feel sorry, but we've got loads of great examples of people who have come in at the bottom and worked their way up. And I agree, it's an exciting industry, but we have to accept the fact that it's not going to be for everybody. You have to love it, don't you?
Yeah. In what other world can you go into an entry-level role and have so many pathways that if you're interested in, you can follow and get to the top? And we need to break that traditional method of a recruitment manager or a general manager looking at somebody's on a piece of paper and judging them before they've even met them, because like Greg said, that person wouldn't have made it into that hotel or spoke to anybody. And it's about people. It's not about what they look like on paper. It's not about the words. It's about that person, and it's about showing them what we can give them and them showing us what they can give us, and taking the opportunity of those people, not the CVs and not what's written down.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I think just sitting on the train, you hear the contractors on the train or people who are doing other jobs come out and say, they got rid of so-and-so because they were late a couple of days on the train. I haven't found one employer, one of our 125 employers, has ever just said, I sacked them. They've always said, I hear that they're late, they're looking dishevelled, they're not the person I employed. I think we should give them some support. I think we need to talk to them. And I don't know another industry that does that. When I first started this, we said we have to have managers he or she has to be empathetic to people's situations. I'm yet to ever have to say to an employer, we can't use that manager or manageress because they're like Attila the Hun. They all want it to work because, as one chief exec to me, we've all got one, haven't we? We've all got someone who's had mental health issues, or might know someone who's been in prison or been in the military, or suffered homelessness, and it's changing those people's perceptions that those people can add a value. But being commercial as well, there's certain people you can't employ.
Yeah, of course. I think something you mentioned earlier about this kind of misconception that you're going to be shouted at or not treated particularly well in hospitality. And Charlie, we had a conversation a couple of weeks back about an experience where you felt in your role you weren't being treated very well and you almost left. Since that time, have you seen a difference in the industry? And do you think that is still happening? People saying, I'm going to be shouted at, I'm not going to be looked after if I join hospitality.
It's something I feel so passionately about because it's a very unique sort of old school way of looking at hospitality. And when I started out more years ago than I'd like to admit, I've worked in the bottom end of hospitality, and those early days of looking after somebody when they're new in a business are so important, and they're the times and the people that you never forget. And it's not like it. I'd wholeheartedly say it's not like that anymore for the most part. And why I do what I do is because I would want those people that we engage with through these partnerships to be given the best start and the best impression of a business and looked after, because hospitality doesn't have to be like that. There's businesses in every industry that will not look after people, and hospitality is it's not the one where you get shouted at and and mistreated anymore, and that's not what BaxterStorey do. And the whole point of this is to give somebody a chance, and once we employ them, look after them properly and take the passion that they have and give them the chance to go wherever they want. Working through, on a split shift or a 14-hour shift in a pub or whatever you're doing, it keeps you in the industry or it makes you leave, and you come through and go, God, that was really hard. But, I now work in a business where we actively, look after people. I'd like to say that we're changing the way that hospitality can be viewed, and there are opportunities in so many different types of role, and we would never want to take somebody and then them have a career-ending sort of experience with us that put them off. So I want to break that stigma of hospitality being a career where you can't enjoy yourself. And the enjoyment, the satisfaction you get when you go to some of our locations and see how happy those people are when they've just been given a chance is, that's the best thing we can see and we can do.
So I found a stat whilst preparing for this conversation that 6% of UK homes do not have access to the internet, and that older people and those from financially vulnerable or disadvantaged backgrounds often remain digitally excluded and potentially aren't finding the jobs that are out there. So in light of this, can Only A Pavement Away work to support those who don't have access to the internet?
I think we can. I think all companies can. When we do our recruitment fairs and our what we call our taster days to introduce someone, there are an awful lot of people who can't log on to a system and have to wait for their support worker or their job broker or their probation officer to get them into that system, or don't know how to do their CV. I think they're quite fortunate now in that people don't need to know where you went to junior school. They want your attitude and behaviour and be honest about where you've come from. And you'll be surprised the amount of sort of older prison leavers and those who have probably done 5-6 years just because of the speed technology changes are like, I don't know if I want that app. How do I do it? So I think we can, we help them, we get them through to Word, but I think it's accepting that if we want to take people who are on these fringes, that we need to be more open. I do know of an issue where a guy went for housing benefit and he was told he had to fill out the form on his laptop, and he said, I don't have a laptop. And they said, well, you can't fill the form out, are you? And that was it. And he was living in an apartment. It was only because the manager went in and spoke at the top of his voice in that job centre that they all suddenly found a spare laptop. And the manager actually said to me, it was easier filling in an application to get private equity money than it was housing benefit. So I think good moving companies like BaxterStorey are working with us, then we can identify if someone's got that issue and find a way around it, rather than, no, you can't apply because you haven't got a laptop.
think as well, like you said, like older generations who don't have that, some people who just don't know how to use technology, like the people that have grown up with it really struggle.
Oh God, do you want to talk to my daughters? I often ring them out and say, help,
Yeah.
help, where's my PowerPoint gone? You know, oh my God, they want a new password. I'm in the, what's it here?
I think
Yeah.
it's about, as well, them knowing that they'll be joining a company where there's people like them as well. And, you know, we're an industry that employs everyone, you know, and that's the great thing. In BaxterStorey, we celebrate, you know, 20, 25, 30 years and, you know, people with incredible service. And they were probably in the same position when they started. And, you know, we want those people to know that if you don't have a mobile or you've got a Nokia 3210 and no laptop, that we'll find a way for you. You know, if you want to apply, and you know we could find you a role somewhere, we'll find a way around it. Unfortunately, we're in a society now that we have to have a level of tech to, you know, to get people through all of the health and safety and all that kind of stuff, and that will be the same for anywhere. But our commitment is to help those people to get through those barriers, and through our partnerships as well, from anybody that would need the help. You'll be joining an industry where there's people like you, and I think that's a really important thing to say.
I think that is really important, and often people misconstrue that. When you're doing a recruiting campaign, you're looking for the people fresh from college or really young, which is obviously we are, but there's lots of other people from all different generations that we're trying to attract as well.
I think it's conversely as well. You get the older generations, don't you, who, you know, like myself, help, you know. But I thought the Nokia was a great phone. It was my first phone. It was my first phone as an area manager. I loved it. I still got it. They asked me back, but I didn't give it to them. And but I think conversely, then you get the younger generation who come out of university and because of the way life is at the moment, are carrying a lot of secretive baggage that we need to be able to help with. And in some ways, it's easier to help the 55-year-old homeless or prison leaver learn the basics of doing a CV or using a phone or using an app. But it's then looking at that younger age group and saying, you know, sort of, in my generation, it was, you haven't got depression or you're not got anxiety, pull yourself together, you know, you're all right. I think my dad would have, I don't think he could have done it, was between someone's got depression. Whereas, you know, I'll be quite open about this. We have got distant family members who have had that. And it's opened my eyes, and I think the industry I think we're probably one of the leading industries who recognises that mental health is there and it needs to give people support, and, you know, accepts that older managers and people need to learn about bipolar and ADHD and things like that and need to encompass it. So I think for hospitality, we seem to be an industry that's got together and said, we know there's all these issues and these blockers, but because of our mantra of let's get it going, let's get these customers served, we remove those blockers quite quickly. Don't you think?
Yeah, and we recognise our industry is incredibly stressful on the front line, and that is a good example. You know, we could take somebody who's on paper is, you know, leading at a hospitality university, and they jump into our business as a manager or something, and a year down the line are struggling. So actually, you know, that's another part of my role, working with universities and colleges and school leavers, and they might fly through the recruitment and get into a role that on paper looks, you know, really on their LinkedIn or whatever looks shiny and important, and then really struggle and think that they're not going to be looked after. But I think it's commitment to recognising anything that could come up and how we would look after them throughout their career. Is what we're doing through our new initiatives and with our ED&I strategy. As you said, Greg, because we're an industry that probably is so hard to be in, but so rewarding. I remember a long time ago when I used to work in hotels that they sort of say to you, you're going to spend more time at work than doing anything else. You know, especially in hospitality, perhaps if you're doing long shifts and whatever. And so you have to be able to feel comfortable to say that you're not okay, or that you are struggling with something, and you have to get along with your team, and it's so important that you're looked after in your role. So it's about people in our roles knowing that we have to put strategies together to look after people if they a year down the line say that they're struggling, and we want to keep them because they're an important part of the business.
Yeah, I heard a fantastic story where someone took on someone who had OCD quite severely, so they were always late for work because they used to lock their front door 20 times, and then they go halfway down the road, and then was the tap still on, and they left the window open, and he always sort of said to them, "You start work at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock," and they were always late. And then he said to them, "You're not late, because I always put you on the rota for 10:30 when you think you've got to start at 10. He said, "Well, what we've got to do now is get you some help." And that person, then he presented them with an award that they had the best timekeeping. Because they always thought they were late, but he'd always factor in the fact they were going to be late. And he said, years ago, Greg, I'd have sacked them. I'd have just got rid of them because they were late. He said, but they're so bloody good when they're here that I need to, A, make sure they're not stressed when they're here, and B, I need to find out more about OCD, and is there some way to help them? And that person's still with them now.
I think that's so important. About educating yourself
on
how you can make that role more okay for everyone.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? What a lovely example of going, we know you love your job, and we want you as part of the team, and let's sit down and have a conversation because we're all people here. We're not just numbers, and we're not just serving people, and we're not it's more important to recognise that I'm as your manager, I need to go above and beyond perhaps in certain situations to keep that person on. And it works both ways, because you retain wonderful employees by a bit of extra support, and that person feels like they're not scared to say how they're feeling at work.
Yeah, that's a lovely story. Thank you. So working with social mobility and education pathway programs is great for businesses to widen their talent pool. In both of your experiences, how have you found, on the flip side, the hiring managers and clients when they have these candidates put forward to them from backgrounds such as Only A Pavement Away and other programs from diverse pools?
Ours has been changing perceptions. So everybody said to us at the beginning, we do a thing called Fill a Flask, where we go out in certain cities just once a year. We either go to the hostels or we give flasks to the rough sleepers. And we do winter warm, where we go and give a blanket once a year. And it wasn't so much to be, we do gooders. It was actually sending volunteers out who were coming back and saying, I've just spoken to someone who's a private equity manager. I've just come back. They don't all have powder under their nose. They don't all have a bottle of meth, and they haven't got a needle in their arm. They were there because there was a family breakup. Oh my God. And again, we sat around the table, and this chief exec turned around and said, my brother is the black sheep of the family. He said, you wouldn't trust him anywhere. He said, because he just steals everything. He said, so we need to... And then everybody around this table came and said, oh, yeah, I was homeless. Oh, yeah, I slept rough. And then it starts, oh, yeah, I took drugs. And I think it is changing that perception that if you come out of prison, you're not necessarily, a sex offender or a terrorist. You actually are in there because something went wrong. You didn't... If you left Afghanistan with anxiety, you haven't got PTSD. You're not a psychopath. And if you've been homeless, you're not necessarily a meth-drinking person. And I think if you change that perception by the hiring manager, and that's what we say, is that they know, so the hiring manager knows where that person's come from. The elephant in the room is taken out, because they're not sort of thinking, right, I'm going to ask you where you were between 2016 and 2018, Greg. And Greg says, I was in Australia, because that's far better than saying I was in Wandsworth. So, but it takes it out that it really, then the hiring manager can turn around and say, when you was in prison, what did you learn? You've got, and I always say to people, if you've got a prisoner, you've got someone who's streetwise. If you've got someone who's been homeless, they've got a desire not to have to go through that food bank again. And if you've got someone who come out of the military, they've got processes. How do you write that down on a CV?
And all those things you've just said are all the things that we are looking for.
Yeah.
In abundance, and can't get taught in school or college, and those people are, they're looking at careers in a different way. Their hunger for earning money to support themselves and somebody giving them a chance is very different to, you know, a lot of other people that would just chug through the normal recruitment system. And I think I completely agree. And I just think from a business perspective, it's about, I'm really lucky, you know, this is a newly launched initiative for us, and everybody that I engage with in the business is really supportive and really keen to get involved. But it's about us also giving them the people in the business support to be able to welcome those people in if they need a bit of extra support or assistance, and knowing that it's not going to be any different in the end. You know, it's not going to be extra work to take these people, and that if anything, they're going to make your team even more diverse and wonderful, and you know, and better. Some of the stories that we have from people who have taken people, you know, candidates from Only A Pavement Away or our other charities, they're all just such positive stories, and it's just about getting those stories out further to the business to say, you know, they're all just people, and we are now giving you this platform to look at people that we wouldn't be able to look at, and the word will spread, and we'll get some more great stories out of it, and before long it will just be a normal part of recruitment, and it won't be this extra thing anymore. It will be that we have these pathways to get to these candidates that we didn't before.
So Greg, how about homeless people? How do you go about that?
Well, again, we work through the charities. I think what's happened in the past is that, and they hate me doing this, you know, you get the do-gooders who I'm going to go and get the person out the doorway, I'll clean them up, I'll get them a suit, I'll go and take them down to my local cafe and I'll get them a job. 2 weeks later, that person's back in the doorway because there's no infrastructure. So we never ever will take anybody who's in the doorway. We always do it through the charities, and then, you know, for someone like BaxterStorey, then you know that they've got right to work, they've got a passport, some form of regular accommodation, bank account, and there is a support network there. And if the charity is a small charity, then we step in and cover that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the important thing to do, is you have to have that structure, because a lot of the people will come out of prison and be given a flat with no furniture. So what do? They go back out on to the streets to talk to their mates, because that's where they feel comfortable. You know, if you're homeless, then everybody thinks you're a rush sleeper. But you're homeless means you haven't got you're sofa surfing. So we always go through the charity, so we know what the backstory of that individual and how we can help.
And Charlie, is there other support that they would need that people don't talk about, maybe?
It's the culture of the business from the top down, and understanding and knowing that as part of the business, you're in a world that you're going to be looked after. And I think that's I know I keep saying it, but that's what is being driven throughout the business now, is thanks to Only A Pavement Away and the work that they do. It means that when we're getting to employing people, they're ready for work and they've had all of that stuff, and they're feeling a little bit more confident and ready to have conversations and go and have interviews and all that kind of stuff. But it's putting the work in 6 months or a year down the line. And once that they start to feel confident and they're starting to be able to, you know, move away from the support in a positive way, but no, it almost taking the reins over. We're then taking the reins over and saying, we're going to look after you from now on. And anything could be thrown up, or, you know, the flexibility of something's happened at home and I'm going to be in late today. Something has, you know, there's something gone wrong with my living arrangements, and the managers knowing that, you know, something could be thrown at them, but it's just the flexibility and being able to have the support, you know, throughout your pipeline, your boss and you know, your manager, knowing that I need to step in and help with something, or we've got somebody who's on long-term sick, or, you know, just having the support throughout the business, and that you're in a culture that's you're not frowned upon if something goes wrong. And, you know, it's no different to any other person, it's no different to any other employee, because they've come from a program like Only A Pavement Away. It's just about knowing that throughout, from the top down, the culture is that we would support people regardless of what's going on.
I think what Charlie said is really important, because when Jill and I started this, everybody say, "Oh, you didn't get thousands into work, and I was talking to a hotel chain that day, and she said, "Do you remember when we first started, Greg? When we first started talking, we all thought we can get hundreds. I've got 1,000 vacancies, I can take them." But it's what Charlie said, is that we've got someone at the moment who came to us from a charity 5 months ago. 5 months ago, they were sort of almost equivalent, couldn't have sat in a room as, they couldn't have come in, it was as nice as the three of you are and talked. They couldn't have come to this building. They probably will, our development coach thinks they're probably another 2 weeks off their first interview. And so the 387 we put into work over the past 2 years, we've touched another 700 people. Now, whether they've come into hospitality or whether they've had the confidence to go and work as a cleaner or work in the construction industry, that helps society, that adds value to society. But they're not ready straight away. We take them from the charities and the prisons, but there's still a lot of issues for them to go in. And that's why we always say it's quality, not quantity. Because it's easier to give BaxterStorey one person who will stay with you for 2 years than give you 500 on a Friday and 499 are gone by the Monday. And it's that backstory that we have to reckon. And then when they get to work, they are just, and most managers don't know if they've got a prison leader or someone who's homeless anyway.
And it's about, they don't want to be seen as any different. They don't want the charity. They don't want, like you said, they don't want to be taken off of the street. They want the opportunity to earn their own living and that paycheck to come through after their first month of working. Very hard, but rewarding in a rewarding team, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, none of our members will have like the Only A Pavement Away badge or a little card. They don't have that at all, because when they join Bedugos, they're a Bedugos employee. We're just there to make sure they stay being what's going on in their background. So we have 2 charity relationship managers, 2 custodial and 2 employer. So the employer one will touch base with either the general manager or one of Charlie's team and say, how's it all going? They will touch base with the individual to say, is everything okay? And then if the individual or the manager says there's an issue, then we go to the charity. If the charity can't do anything about it, then we will step in and may help them. It might be their accommodation, might be cash problems. Don't hide the fact that we did have someone who sort of just applied for their 3rd fridge freezer, so they seem to be knocking them out down the Roman road pretty quick. So we have to be commercial about it. There are people who are going to try and make use of the system, but on the whole, I would say we've had about half a dozen people that we haven't wanted to continue helping because they are unscrupulous. What it does is, by helping the members behind the scenes, is they don't become this guinea pig or this person. Obviously we want testimonials and people to talk about it, but only if they're happy. The amount of people you get and say, well, can I have a picture with so-and-so? Can I have a picture with so-and-so? No. And then suddenly they cancel the meeting. You think, oh, well, we know why, because you couldn't have your picture taken with them. So, but it's very much giving them that support. But you tend to find in hospitality that the GMs do that. They will ring our relationship managers quite a lot and say, I think Bob or Betty might have an issue. How do I handle this?
You've kind of mentioned lots of stories throughout this whole conversation, but is there any powerful ones that potentially hospitality in particular that you've had from Only A Pavement Away that you'd like to share?
I think there's Gerald, Woody have got a job at the Hilton. There's Paul, who has been promoted 3 times at Ivy Asia.
Wow.
Was on the steps at Trafalgar Square. He's quite open. He goes on. He will go on any interview to say what his story was. There's Julian that could hardly speak English. He was on a park bench for 18 months because he came over to work in the construction industry and he was duped on his wages. Then we have got a gang enforcer as a pastry chef in a top London restaurant. He's got a fantastic story. An enforcer with the gangs. Now he's got 2 children. We helped out with some of the baby clothes when he first started, and he's just done over 3 years. So it's stories like that, and I think it's also a lady called Marissa who started at the Young's pub around the corner, did 3 months, said she would never have served front of house, and then her family moved back up north, and she wanted to reconnect with them. She said to me that when she went for her interview up north, and it wasn't in hospitality, she wasn't asked why she'd been homeless. She was asked what had she learned about customer service with Young's. And that's what it does. It's when people move on, that what hospitality does is, by giving them that skills and behaviours and that team ethic, that when they go to the next job, people aren't in. So what did you learn at Benugo? What did you was it the Serpents on? You worked at bloody hell. You worked in that. Yeah, I've been there. What was it like on a Friday night? Not, oh, I see you were claiming benefits, or I see you came out of a women's prison or something like that.
Any of our teams will have such a huge, diverse range of backgrounds and problems and great things and bad things. Like Greg said, none of that matters at the end of the day. You're all there doing a great job and feeling proud of wherever you're working. It's not how did you get here, or what happened to this, and tell me this, because you could have a grade A student from a top university on a hospitality course, or you could have somebody through this program, and they're all working together, and it doesn't matter. It's about what you're doing and how passionate you are about working in hospitality and with your team, and all of that sort of fades into the background if that's what you're passionate about. So that's what we're trying to do.
How can other industries learn from what hospitality is doing when it comes to partnering with charities, social enterprises and educational gateway programs? What advice would you give to them?
It's sort of continuing what we've been saying, but I think hospitality do it so well. I want to say that we do it better than anybody else. That as long as you can understand that you need to look further than just the people applying online or through your website, and the range of people out there it's not about just finding somebody and giving them a junior role. We're such an accessible industry, and for any other industry to sort of say, well, I couldn't take somebody without any qualifications, I couldn't take somebody that doesn't match up what we need on that job description or in the CV, well, that's not true. You could take anybody. There's always an opportunity in every industry to give somebody a chance through a program like this, and I think we are lucky in hospitality that we can give so many people from so many walks of life that chance and take them right through to the top if that's where they want to go. We can show how well we can do it by success stories like we've talked about before. Other industries have to just get on board and understand that it's about the potential that person can give you, and just give them 15 minutes on the phone. When there's programs like Only A Pavement Away who take them from perhaps feeling like they're nothing through to being able to have a 15-minute conversation with a manager on the phone. That's almost the mountain climb, done. And then we're having 15 minutes with a candidate on the phone, and we could change their lives. And I think people in other industries need to see the benefit of what that can do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there are people who stand out. So prison leavers, you've got Timpsons. There's a guy called Alistair in the north who does fantastic work with prison leavers. I mean, he sort of puts money into building accommodation for them and works with. He does a fantastic job. And I think you also got some of the supermarkets. But it is hospitality that's an industry. When you look at it, and we set this up, we have we've got caterer.com, Hospitality Jobs UK, leisure jobs, Harry, all of those. If we sort of say who's going to sponsor that for us, on one does, the other four say, well, we're not coming. They don't say we're not coming. They say, right, okay, we're in there. We've got to make this work together as hospitality. And we recently wrote to Prince William about his initiative of curing homelessness. I went out and asked people to endorse a letter we sent. We got 150 responses within a week. They're all saying, yeah, put my name down, put my name down, put my name down. And I think it's just like Charlie says, it's that what other industries can get. You're here, Timpsons will do something, but I don't have any other key cutters or people who are doing it. You hear Tesco's doing it, but the supermarkets do it diversely. But when we do it as hospitality. And that's where I think we need to get that story out to the public who are saying, when you go in to one of our outlets in hospitality and leisure, you have got a strong chance of being served by someone who a year ago was struggling. And that's another thing we don't promote.
And that's what hospitality can do. You can walk into, exactly as you've said, you can walk into any of our locations, you can walk into any hospitality location and not know, that person's story, that person's background. And it's not a building, you know, perhaps I don't want to badmouth any other industries here, you know, you could be in a building full of IT or, you know, something that, and they've taken the top 1% of people from their categories, and they've all got the same, you know, they've all come from the same place, and they've all got the same story. And isn't it wonderful to think that, you know, perhaps you could go into and be exactly served by somebody who was 6 months ago had come out of prison, or, you know, just wanted somebody to give them a chance.
Well, we're coming to the end of this episode. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to add?
I think we've got a great opportunity to change the perception, but I think the industry needs to come together to do it. Like I said earlier, you get Charlie on a video, you talk about what hospitality's doing. We do a big campaign of we're not low skilled. I think there's like those key messages, and, you know, we are as good as the continent, and we're not going down the tubes when you read every magazine, or, you know, so many of this closing, so many of that closing. Yeah, we do need to lobby, but we need to also, I think, get to the positive of what we contribute now, rather than what you're gonna lose if you don't help us. We need to sort of take the fight to them.
And I just think the proof is in the everyday stories. It's not in the big social media campaigns, and it's not in the sticking a celebrity on the front of your website or whatever it is. It's about those stories that hearing about, that people who have been in a difficult situation have been looked after properly, and having having those real world scenarios where somebody has come into a business and it's changed their perspective.
Yeah.
On somebody, just giving them a chance.
This has been a really powerful conversation, and thank you, Greg and Charlie, for joining FYI, the BaxterStorey podcast. Thanks also to our listeners for tuning in. If you'd like to find out more about Only A Pavement Away, check out our website, www.onlyapavementaway.co.uk. Thank you.